Hey, good morning, everybody. It is Tuesday, January 15th, 2019. This is our Get Out of Your Effing Way call. This morning, the topic this morning is center, and we're going to talk about it. But one of the things that hit me yesterday is we're doing a lot in the head. We're talking a little bit about the body, but we're doing a lot in our minds, and we're awakening stuff. I'd like to take just, again, 2 minutes for us to just become a little more present in this moment, become a little more aware of yourself and your own greatness. So just kind of get comfy in your chair, and just be prepared for you to reveal to yourself some amazing awareness. So if you want, you can turn the camera off, leave it on. It's all good to me. But just take this moment, be aware of in your own moment, in your own skin where you are right now. If your feet are on the floor, I want you to feel them connecting to the earth. I want you to feel all of those people who are in your corner that you have a connection to, that are there to support you. People who are in your life now, people who are from years ago and centuries ago. I have a very dear friend of mine, Kyle Wilson, who worked with Jim Rohn. He says whenever he does centering, he knows Jim Rohn is right there in his corner. There's some folks who maybe aren't around you right now that are there in your corner. Just know that their energy is there. I want you to be aware of your own greatness, your own desire to do more, be more, have more. In order for you to take this next level, in order for you to take this next step of greatness in your own life, there has to be a letting go of something. In that letting go, that's where we find our blockages. That's where we find those things we are attached to. And we want to let them go, but if we let them go, part of us doesn't know what's going to fill that spot back up. I know that what will fill that spot back up is love and joy and peace and new talents and new abilities. So I just want you to breathe that in for just a second. Feel it in your body. I know as soon as I started talking, I felt it everywhere. Feel it in your body. Where do you feel it? And if there's nothing there yet, that's okay. It's all just a part of it. If you do feel something, sit with it for a second. Just like when you sit on your foot for a while and the pins and needles come to and you're like, that's what awakening feels like. It's not this, somebody wearing a silk camisole out in the middle of a field with daisies all around. Awakening is difficult. Awakening is something that it takes energy for the body to create. Awakening should be easy, but it's not because of where we're at in the world right now. So just know that you have this greatness. Breathe deeper than you normally breathe. Exhale a little stronger than you normally exhale, more. Get some fresh oxygen in that body. Good morning, everyone. I got to tell you, there's a part of my ego that was just screaming in my head going, oh, so what are you going to go buy a white cloth now? What are you going to go learn to sit lotus style? And I have to keep fighting that because no, I'm not the guru, but it's just to help center. So with that being said, good morning, good morning, good morning. I love you all. Welcome, welcome, welcome. You guys are just amazing souls. Today, conversation I wanted to share with us is about being centered. Getting energy now to enter our reality. I don't know where these anagrams come up from, but isn't that kind of cool to enter our reality? Right? Do y'all see that? Yes? Nod, head nod. Okay, good. We need time to center. I don't know if anybody knows Brandon Bouchard. I'm sure we all do. But if you've seen anything about his new planner that he has, it is hour by hour. It's an hour by hour planner with some great questions on it. And so I'd ask you to write this down in your centering ideas. One thing I can get excited about today. What's one thing you could get excited about today? Another one I liked, who's someone who needs me to be on my A game? So this morning at about 4:45, my answer was the one thing I get excited about today was my awareness. And then who's the one person that needs me to be on my A game? Mason popped up. I could think of a lot of other people that I would have thought I needed to be on my A game for. Who do you need to be on your A game for? Could be you. Could be you. Remember, if we're not our thoughts and we argue with ourselves and our body through stress and strain, or my gut's in a knot, or I feel it in my chest, I feel like an elephant sitting on my chest, it just proves we're not our thoughts. And our body's got some other kind of control, because none of us would want to have a knot in our gut. What do you center? Think about that. I want you to think of, everybody think of your car. You realize that you can take a point the size of your pen, if it was strong enough, if you made it strong enough out of the proper steel and all of that stuff, we're not going to get into the physics part of it. You realize you could balance your car. There is a center point to your car. And the slightest a feather, has anybody seen that woman who does the thing with the feathers and the like the palm frond things? I'll find a link and put that inside of Daily Awakening. But she takes this feather and balances it. And she then extends this thing out with these long palm fronds that gets out like 12 feet. And somebody knocks the feather off and the whole thing falls apart. That's centered. You could center your house. So let's take your life right now. Where would be the center for your life? What would that look like? How long would it take you to find the center? How far have we swung that pendulum of stress and anxiety, of joy and income searching, and needing to be there for friends and needing to be there for family, when we got to get back to a center of our own? What I'm saying right now, if you're taking notes or thinking about it, where do you feel that in your body when I ask, when you hear the words be centered? Sean, be centered, where do you feel it? It's funny, I feel it in my feet. I don't know that I've ever had anything where I felt it, but one of the things that we're doing is becoming more aware of our body, because that's where the cells need to adapt and adopt. That's where we need to take the dopamine that's running in our brain. Maybe I'm hungry. And it needs to run down through into our bodies. When you have a conversation, go back to Covey. Seek first to understand, then be understood. Can you see their off-centeredness? Imagine if your goal for today or for the foreseeable future was to help. Now we talk about balance. Here's why I think balance is different than centered. Because balance, when we think about it, the way I think about it is I think of a teeter-totter. I think of balance as, can I balance this? Centered is, can I in all directions, right? We talk about having a whole life. We talk about being more present. Well, if we're present in a two-dimensional place instead of a three-dimensional world, center takes a lot more awareness in my mind. If you watch TV or you read a book or you listen to TED Talks, where is that being added to you? See, when we take stuff in, these calls have forced me to get out of center. And so what I kept doing is that I would just create more content, thinking that would balance things out, but it wasn't helping me get centered. So in the centering, it's important for me that if we keep adding, oh, this is good. I love the calls. It's awesome. Am I making you more unbalanced? Right? You go grocery shopping and thank goodness our car, we don't have to put 10 tons of food down in the hood as we do in the trunk. Right? Our car can deal with that. We can deal with getting new information. We can deal with stress and anxiety. But how do you get back to center? Because no matter what you can add, you can always adjust your center point. Is this making sense? How much time do we spend in effort to be centered? I know that sounds like you need to go, you don't. To be centered requires you to make a decision, to make an awareness, to let go. Sometimes being centered means we've got to take a step back. Means we've got to become this person who just, the matrix, I'll go to the matrix, where you can just dodge everything, right? You're in this place no matter what, because how many of you would agree that shit is coming at you in all directions? Right? Forwards, backwards. Your past is hitting you in the back of the head. Your forward is hitting you in the front of the head. Your cousins are calling you on the side, and your nephews and nieces and this and X's and Y's. And that's why I think they have the song, All My Exes Are in Texas. They don't want to be around them. How much time do you spend being off-centered? That could be overwhelming. Seriously. I started to look at that. I'm starting to use this hourly journal. And it's like, Michelle says, so what'd you do today? There's some pretty big gaps in that thing. I know I lived it, but it's like, and I look back and go, what the hell happened at 4 o'clock? Couldn't tell you. So was I unconscious or was I totally conscious and wasn't aware of time? My goal in this get out of our effing way is for us to become this amazing resource that we already are. See, we're these great resources, all of us are these great resources for so many other people. People call on us, be it our job, be it our this, be it our that. I really, really want us. This is very full of me. I really want us to be better for ourselves. If we started to look, this is almost kind of what just popped in my head is the emperor's clothes. If we started to look at others, see others out of or off of center, do you think there's probably not a whole lot of people you might see on center? There's some people that you probably are drawn to and are attracted to that pull your energy in, that you go, I just love listening to them. I love listening to Brené Brown, but she is the most off-centered, winging it with a prayer, amazing soul, and I love it. But in that just holy shit, hang on, grab it with both hands. There's still a balance to that, right? You watch a rodeo, a bronco, a horse. Where's Leslie? A bronco. There's somebody who gets on the horse and ride a bucking bronco, right? Or riding the bulls. All they're trying to do is hang out for 8 seconds. What if it was, that's what our life is like. What if we just need to try to hold on for 8 seconds? That slide's not supposed to be in there. So becoming aware when you're in or out of center, or when you're not in center. See, it's easy to say we're off center, but how far off, right? If you've ever been lost and you can see clearly and you got the directions and GPS took you to the right place, how many times has any of us put something in GPS and it took us to a different location? And when you got to the place, they go, yeah, GPS doesn't have our directions down right. But you're going, but I was following the GPS. Can we still follow the thing that's guiding us and be lost? Sometimes we have to check in. Hey, I'm sitting here, it says I've arrived, but I'm at a Jiffy store. Oh yeah, that's where it takes you. What you need to do is you need to come back 2 blocks and go down to the right, and we'll be there on the right. What can you do to begin the releasing process? The releasing of not being in center. It takes, I mean, we did a 3-minute meditation, 5-minute meditation, just breathing. What beliefs do you have towards centeredness? Is that something only people who come out of a cave, live by a river on the top of a mountain get? If I were to ask you to tell me your definition of being centered, what would that seem like? What would it feel like? What would it sound like? How, if you were centered and you were completely at peace and in balance, could anyone ever talk you off your centeredness? It'd be kind of like me trying to talk you off of loving a loved one. I couldn't imagine, you could go till you're blue in the face and give me 1,001 reasons why I shouldn't love Mason. Absolutely, you could give maybe 1,002 reasons. Do you think any of those would talk me off of that center? But now you go give me 6 reasons why I suck as a coach or as a speaker or as a meditation leader. Hell, I'm right there with you. But why? How can I be talked off a center that easily? Well, maybe it's coming from people of influence in my life. How many of us have been influenced by people in our life that they didn't mean harm, but they've caused us dread? I love some of the, I go back every now and then. Charlie, your name is sometimes held in vain around this house because somebody will have something, a challenge or a discomfort, and I'll go, interview it. They go, what the hell are you talking about? Interview it. I go, interview it. Charlie says interview it. Sit down with it and ask it why it's here. Well, I don't know who this Charlie is. I haven't given him your real name, Bob, to protect the innocent. Ooh, what's your list of 10 ways that you can center your energy? I don't care if it's 3 or 110. But if we start to, with kinesiology, the writing of it, the awareness of it, I don't know that I've ever thought about 10 ways I could center my energy. I know breathing is one. I know we do it all the time, but I think we were talking, oh yeah, we were talking about it here. Wim Hof, the guy they call the Iceman, climbed Mount Everest in his shorts. One of the things that he does, and I was sharing it with my bride, and she says, yes, we have a meditation mentor, somebody who helps us with organizing thoughts, if you will. And there's something called fire breathing, right? That fast breathing. And if you've ever been in yoga, you can do that, right? In and out. And it causes the body to have this amazing amount of heat and energy. That could be a centering thing. Is there a favorite calming music that you like to listen to? And if you haven't figured out Google Play, if you have a Gmail, you have Google Play available to you. You can download that to your phone if you don't have iTunes on it or don't want to, whatever. If you want a calming meditation, you know, you can use Mozilla or Firefox, and you can download just about any video on YouTube. It has the steps there to do that. You can download that, download the MP4 and put it on your phone. Calling up a friend and telling them you love them. It's all about energy. It's about being in control of your energy, not being pulled, not being pushed. What would life be if you weren't pulled or weren't pushed, but you were just? How can centering happen? It's fearful. Okay, well, let me ask this. Well, I'll just share with this and see if anybody resonates with this. When I think I want to mentor, you know what shows up in my mind? 600 things I got to get done. Maybe 601. You don't have time to mentor. Are you kidding? You got to create some income. You got to go create some contacts. You got to create some content. You got to go do this. You got to take Mason to lacrosse. You got to read the book for the 1903 Ron White Book Club. You got to go listen to As a Man Thinketh. You got to do, there's 1,000 gottas. And then I have to breathe and say, in order to understand those better, I better get centered. So the fear is, what am I going to miss? What am I not going to get done by taking time to meditate, to relax? What's your thoughts around meditation, the word meditation? And then the sadness is, and here's the sadness I have, which is starting to go away on a regular basis. But since we've started this now, almost 20 days, I'm like, shit. You know how long we could have been doing it? I could have been doing this? Listen, does anyone know of a day in history that 6:30 a.m. did not exist? It's existed for every day. What the hell was I doing? I would lay in bed sometime, Tuesdays and Wednesdays when I did my workshops, I would get up at 6:45, 7 o'clock, 7:15. If I got a hotel right next to my event, or maybe at the event, my event starts at 10, I'd get up at 8:30. What the heck was going through my head? Well, I can't fault it. Can't go back and change the past. Although there's some science, I'll tell you about that on another event where they actually did that, but we'll just skip over that right now. But now the excitedness is, I love getting up. It's funny, I went to bed at 2:30 last night. Doing stuff, doing calls, conversations, coaching, mentoring, blah, 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 journaling. 2:30 I went to bed, I get to get up at 4:30. And I said, you know what? I don't want to say her name, but you know the little Amazon thing. I said, Exa, set an alarm for, what did I set the alarm for this morning? 4:30. And then, because I know me, I set another one for 4:15. I mean, 4:45. And at 4:04, I rolled over. Actually, at 3:33, it was kind of cool. So an hour and a half later, 3:33 or an hour later, I woke up and saw all the threes, which means to me alignment and energy. And I went, okay, I'm ready. Got my hour. All I'm saying is that there's this new normal. We become rule breakers and rule makers for our own self. And I'll leave you with this. What will I challenge today to become more aware of my centered state? Right now, am I in-centered? Speaking with you, having a conversation. What will happen if I become more centered? I know this. I absolutely, positively need to be more centered with Mason. I don't know what it is as a dad, but I just get agitated. Maybe I'm expecting too much. Maybe I'm wanting too much. But there's a part of me that says if I'm not stern, am I faulting him? But if he's my son and my energy flows through him, what am I worried for? he's proven that he doesn't get drawn into other things. He has this amazing ability. So this is kind of my little confession right now, and I'm saying it out loud. I don't know where it's coming from, but maybe I just need to be more centered. I absolutely know that I need to be more centered there. So that's what I just got from this. I say it, right? It's kind of like we've seen those preachers or authors or book folks who are talk about the universe and this, that, and the other. And every employee in their company goes, they're the biggest jackass in the world, and they can't keep anybody employed because they're on stage one way and they're different in their personal life. So I will be more centered with Mason. Cool. I'm glad I showed up today. So with that, turn it over to this amazing high energy misfits. What showed up for y'all? What are you feeling? What are you hearing in your?
It's Tracy.
Hey, Tracy.
Hey. So it's interesting you're talking about centered and breathing, you know, the first thing we did, because that is where I don't breathe. Like when I start to get anxious, I really do just hold my breath. I just want to know who else does that. Like I truly have to catch myself and tell myself to breathe. Like I don't even, and sometimes I'll have held my breath for, I don't even know how long. So what is that about? Anybody have any insight on that?
Well, so I'll go back to babies real quick and then I'll let other folks jump in. If you watch a baby breathe, they breathe what's called diaphragmatic breathing. And I would encourage us all to become more aware of that because it's the way we breathed when we were babies. And that means if you put your hand on your belly button and you breathe, do you feel it move? If you don't feel it move, most people are up here, upper respiratory breathing. And that causes very shallow breathing, which allows a lot of CO2 to stay in the lungs. And then we get a deficiency of oxygen and we start to lose all of this. But yes, the reason that we are is because, think about this. If we get scared or if we go into trauma, one of the first things that they look at is they want to see what the respiratory rate is. If it's high, if it's fast breathing, right? And all of this stuff. So when you go into that locked breath, that's trauma. The body is going through trauma. So becoming more aware of that sooner, and Google diaphragmatic breathing if you need to. But that will, and even right now, we can all begin to breathe that, and that will allow you to have a better control over your breath when you breathe from that deepest part of your lungs. Who else has some input on that? Go ahead, Danya.
Hey, Tracy. You know, as soon as you said that, I instantly had a memory, a flashback. The very first time that I ever really experienced that, I was about 19, 20 years old, and I was on a cruise, and I had decided to go scuba diving. And they had this little class that we were going to have to take and everything, and it was actually in the ocean in Jamaica. And I was with a group of 2 adults, 2 kids, and me. And at the class, you know, they were teaching you all the sign language and everything that you have to know when you're up underneath there, and if your mask gets knocked off and everything else. And I remember going into the water and putting on the mask and realizing, holy crap, I'm a nose breather. I cannot breathe because it cuts that off, and you instantly, you know, start trying to breathe and you can't. So I talked to the instructor, and she's like, okay, we're going on. We'll come back in about 15 minutes, but I just want you to put your head under the water and learn to believe and trust in your equipment. And so literally I stood there for 15 minutes just sticking my head in the water, getting used to the equipment. She come back up, she goes, are you ready? And I'm like, I'm not sure that I'm ready, but I'm not missing this opportunity. I mean, this was a once in a lifetime thing for me. So I was like, I'm doing it. So we went underneath the water, and the entire time I literally had to completely focus and be centered on my breathing, because I knew if there was one time that I breathed through my nose and I panicked because I couldn't catch my breath, that I would just lose out on the whole thing. So yes, fear can absolutely paralyze you to the fact of not being, I mean, I don't remember the scuba dive at all. I mean, I don't remember any of it because I was so focused on breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out, that I completely missed everything that was around me. So when we focus and when we're centered like that, everything else just kind of gets drowned out. So we need to be aware of that. So I've got to go. You guys have a blessed day.
Love you, Danya.
Yeah.
So Tracy, I'll throw one more thing out there. Remember, we've been talking, I started off sharing that when we set goals and we set desires, we set them all up here. But what you just shared is how your body hijacks all of your goals. And that's the thing to be aware of, is that so I would encourage you to do things you don't normally do. I know this is going to sound funny, but if you were to take that shirt that you're wearing and put it on backwards and just sit with it and feel that the neck is in the back, right? The V is in the back and it's pulling up here, your brain would absolutely go ape poo-poo, because you're like, this thing isn't right. What the hell am I doing? I got my shirt on backwards. Oh my God, what if somebody sees me? Little things like that, right? Put your hair in a fountain instead of a ponytail. Oh my God, are you kidding me? No, I'm not. The more we can do to take control of our body and say, listen, you son of a bitch, I'm in charge, as opposed to this habitualization that runs our body, that when you get into a stress situation, you can't breathe. Your body's going, stop, because if you do this, I don't know what it's telling you, but if you do this, you're going to break through and you're going to be this new soul. And what the hell am I supposed to do? You're going to leave me on the curb? This is a perfect example of how we set a goal, we go for it, and the body goes, sorry. Who's got some other experiences around that?
You know, Sean, I think I love the fact that, I wish Danya was still here, that she brought the idea of trust into this. Because when I think about being centered, I think about the removal of fear. I don't know that I can be centered and be in fear. I don't think those two can exist in the same space. And so it's that release of fear. And how do we release fear? You have to trust, right? You have to be in more trust. And I was thinking about what you said about Mason and what she shared about her diving experience. I'm afraid of water. I had experiences as a child. I never learned to swim. I love the water. I love the sound of water. I love the sight of water. I am scared to death of being in the water. So what happens is when I'm in a place where I feel like that might happen, I hold my breath, right? And we think about holding our breath. What is a place where we hold our breath? In the water, right? I'm holding my breath outside of the water, already in fear of the water. And I think it's an example. For me, I remember very clearly, because here's what can happen. If we don't deal with this for us, we pass it on. It's like you were talking about Mason. If you're not centered and out of fear, then what comes in is your fear. What travels forward to them is your fear. I remember a time many, many years ago at Schlitterbahn with my granddaughter, and she's 18 now, but this goes way, way back. But she's like, a fish. She's never been afraid of water. So, you can put her in any kind of water and she's going to have a great time. Her experience with water, she's very centered in the water. I'm not. I'm very fearful in the water. But as I watched her, I was so afraid because I was projecting my fear to her. I was projecting my fear onto her. I couldn't allow her to enjoy because I couldn't enjoy. So I think it's important, and it's a good reminder to me that one of the first things I think we have to do, Sean, to be centered in any moment is to say, if I can't be centered in this moment, why? What is it I'm afraid of in this moment that's preventing that? And it could be different every moment. But that came to mind because for me to deal with that, I had to learn to trust her. Like for you to be centered with Mason means you have to trust Mason. It's not even just about us. It's about who we're trying to be centered with. You know, so I had to learn to trust my granddaughter.
And what we need to let go, right? I need to let go that. You need to let go your fear for your granddaughter. And again, trust. But it's this identity I have as a dad,
Yes.
right? And so I need to let go of that identity of maybe my dad. I don't remember my dad really ever being stern. He had a look, but mom was the warden. I mean, she was the warden. She was the head warden, and she would just, wooden spoons and shoes were the common weapon. So I don't know where this part of me is coming from of discipline, but yeah, it's just I need to trust in him. He's always proven himself to be this good egg. So yeah, and again, I'm like, my room is normally cool, and I don't know if somebody just turned the heat on, but again, my body is responding. I'm like burning up right now because there's a change of state.
Well, anytime fear comes into the equation, and I just really like the idea. I love that Don, you brought it up, is to say, look, this is about fear and trust. This is where we have to be able to be willing to look at that fear. I had to be, for me to enjoy my daughter at Schlitterbahn, guess what I had to do? I had to get in the damn water, right? I couldn't move past it. So I had to push myself to say, quit pushing your fear on her, face your fear for you. I had to get into the water, and I had to be able to be in the water before I could relax and say, okay, I'm fine with this. It's not going to be something that I love or enjoy, and that's okay, but it doesn't have to be something I fear.
Right. I think that's a huge point right there. I may not enjoy it. I can be centered and uncomfortable, but know that, but I don't have to be fearful. I think that's a huge nugget that just kind of slipped in there.
Right. I mean, if you think so, like flip it and think of something that you are 100% comfortable doing. It doesn't cause you any angst or anything. It's just like, it's like breathing to you. It's so natural. It's like breathing to you. And recognize that there's a very high percentage of the human race that can't do that without fear. We all have something. Public speaking is like second nature to me. I have never once been afraid to speak in public. That's just not in my DNA. Is, I don't know if it was being raised at a Baptist church where you had to give your testimony every 5 minutes. I don't know what, but for some reason, speaking publicly doesn't faze me. It never has. So I am mystified by people that absolutely get nauseous if you ask them to stand in the front of the room. I'm like, what? What's your deal, right? But then that person could go jump in the ocean and think nothing of it. And I'm like, oh my God, what did you just do? We all have our thing, right? And I think it's important to remember to cut ourselves some slack to say, I'm not afraid of everything. I'm afraid of this thing. Put some context with it and say, okay, so how do I deal with this thing?
Gosh, Kathy, that's so true. So many things are popping in my head with everything that people have said this morning. I've experienced a lot of those things, but two things that came to mind. One, I was not that person who was okay to do public speaking at all. I mean, when I first started in networking, it was back in the day of none of this, right? And it was the phone. And I literally had customers that I would take the product and leave it on their doorstep. And then I would run home and call them to let them know it was there. And then I would have them leave a check in the mailbox, and I would make sure I would go when they weren't there because I didn't want to face them, right? It's so strange how when I think back to way back then, but obviously a lot of growth happens, but still that very first time that Rick and I had to go on stage, it was in London where I live, and it was like 400 people, and we'd never spoken in front of that many people. And honestly, we were so afraid. Both of us were ready to throw up. We'd never experienced the nervousness, all of that. And all to this day, both of us remember, we have no clue what we said on that stage. Everybody was standing at the end. Apparently it was great. But all we remember at the very beginning was grabbing hold of each other's hand and saying, oh, what the heck, let's go. Neither one of us can remember what was said. But then I go back to the water part you're talking about. It's interesting. I love swimming. I had never had a fear of swimming. Experienced the snorkel thing that Dawn, you talked about, which was, again, that overcoming and centering. But the one thing that brought to mind, we were at a cottage a few years ago, all our kids and our grandkids, and these kids are running off the dock and just jumping into this lake. And I don't know whether it was an age thing, I don't know what it was, but I couldn't do it. Number one, it wasn't a pool and I couldn't see the bottom. I could not see through that water. And there's fish in there, right? And I could see them. And I'm watching my grandkids and they're like, come on, grandma, go. And I would get to the end and freeze and get to the end and freeze. And it just looked like I was going to jump into a big black hole and I didn't know what was there. And I can feel it right now. Like right now, I'm right there on the end of that dock looking at this black water. And they're cheering me on and going, come on, and this thing of, you've got to do this. Your grandchildren can do this all day long. What's your problem? And you're wrestling with myself. Nobody pushed me. And I remember finally saying, okay, I'm going. And I jumped. But that moment, the feeling, I can feel it right now as if I'm right there doing it. But then once I got in, it was like, well, that was dumb. Do you know what I mean? But it was just when you don't have control over something, there was no time to center anything. It was like, what do I do? It was more panic. I don't know if I would go do it again. It's one of those things, I've done that. I don't need to. But those feelings are real, you know, when you're going through them. And now thinking about it, it's like, wow, you know, why did that happen? And what was that fear factor? And was it just the fact that I didn't know? But yet you're embarrassed because your 3-year-old grandchild is jumping off and having a great time and you can't do it, right? So anyways, just wanted to share that this morning. That's kind of interesting.
Well, peer pressure is a pretty big thing. So
Yeah.
I see Charlie's unmuted.
Okay, I'll add a little meat to the bones of this discussion. I think I can tie a couple of things together here in a way. Not knowing that you were going to talk about centering, my meditation led me this morning to review a YouTube clip of Simon Sinek titled "Start with Why."
Great clip.
And he offers a very simple model of what he calls a golden circle, which represents what he discovered was going on in the psychology of great leaders, business leaders, very successful people. And that is, the model is just a simple target image, the outer band of which is where what occurs, what it is that you're doing. The center band is how you're doing it, and the center of the target is why. So he's suggesting that if you start with your why, develop how, you'll end up with a what that's successful, whether it's sales or building a business or in your personal life. And so, like where Kathy was talking about being afraid to go in the water, she probably did it anyway because she had a why, which was to relate to her daughter in some way or another. So, you know, and I was glad I revisited this because I'm kind of being a student of marketing. And in that clip, he gives some good examples of how, for example, Apple operates their business and markets not from starting with, we have this most wonderful product. They start with their why, which is to be outrageously different, create something more effective in the world, more useful, and build their business from the inside out, from why. So and there's a psychologist, I can't think of his name, but he's identified what's called self-efficacy expectation, which is the belief that you can accomplish something. So if you start with a why and you build a strategy for how to do it, all of a sudden you're not afraid to go ahead and do it. As long as you can, represent yourself, your purpose, why you're going to do what you're going to do, and some schema for how you're going to make it happen. So that's my soapbox for today.
Well, you know how Jim Rohn says it this way: when the promise is clear, the price is easy. When the promise is clear, the price is easy. And when the price is hard, we don't have the promise clear. And that goes back to what you're talking about with the why. If you don't have that, the why and the promise are the same thing.
Right.
Why? That's the promise, right? And you're right. I would have never gotten in water ever anywhere had it not become an issue with me and my granddaughter. If I didn't feel like I wasn't able to let her enjoy something in life, that I was getting in her way, that became my why. So yeah, I think you're spot on. I mean, there has to be something, and it may just be that you're tired of it being in your way. But it gets us back, I do want to swing it back, Sean, to your word, because I think the purpose of the word is really a monitor for fear. For me, if I'm not centered, if I'm not in the moment, if I can't feel present, I have to ask myself why. What am I afraid is going to happen if I surrender to this moment? What's going to happen? What's the fear? And that to me is where this is. You get to the root. You have to get to the root cause. You know, I'm a software person. I do analysis for data and software and process improvement. And we always say, what's the root cause? If you don't get to the root cause, you never really fix anything. And that to me is what that fear is about.
Yeah,
I love it.
In the theory of constraints model, you're looking for the weakest link in the chain, which is what stops you. And you develop a solution for that weak link, then all of a sudden everything else starts to work for you.
Or you become aware of the next weak link, right? That's where I think it was Walsh, Jack Walsh, who said we're going to always fire the bottom 10% of the, or maybe it was a basketball player. We're going to get rid of the 10%, the lowest 10% of the team, and just keep upping it and upping the game. Charlie, question. I typed in self-efficacy. Does the psychologist, it says the psychologist it talked about was Albert Bandura. Does that ring a bell?
That's exactly right. Couldn't think of his name.
I'm going to put his link. So I put two things in our Daily Awakening. I put Simon Sinek's video that Charlie was referring to, and I'm going to also add Albert Bandura's information as well on self-efficacy. Listen, you know what? I got to tell you, I have no idea where these things are going to go. I'm just so glad they go. And that I've been fortunate enough to be a catalyst with all of us, and you guys are a catalyst for me. So take the last 8 minutes, and we're going to end this, but just take the last couple of minutes and just sit with this and look at centeredness, because here's what I do know. We can end this and then go, okay, good, I got my last note, and boom, we could be into things. So take the last couple of minutes, just relax with it, and see how centered you can be throughout the rest of your days. Fair enough? I love you all. I appreciate you all. Have an amazing day. You are amazingly centered beings, and you help me get my center back. Love you all. Bye for now.